Hello. Yeah, so sorry about that. I thought it was working, and everything is working now. Let me know if you can hear me. Um, Lost a few minutes there. Sorry for the wait. I noticed that no one was saying anything, so I was wondering what was going on there. Although it still says 7 people waiting, so what's going on? Uh, Martin Glazer, yes, I guess. Okay, I see. Let me see what's going on. Go back to my channel. I see your comments on my phone, but I don't see them on my screen. Just give me a second. Live now. Okay. Okay, there. Looks like, oh yeah. You'll be there. Instagram is, okay, I was watching you on Instagram. Great. Okay, everything's working now. So sorry you missed the first 3 minutes of my painting. Just to explain again, I was over on Instagram um, doing the drawing section of this painting. This is of Ellie. I decided to paint her instead of who I had scheduled to paint, which was the first runner up of my Instagram followers choice contest. And but I saw this photo of Ellie, and I saw immediately that I wanted to paint it. And and also I did mention that I have a new setup that before I was just doing all my audio talking into my phone and the sound was horrible, and now I got an adapter which allows me to both charge my phone, and then there's a USB port on the a lightning port and a USB port on the adapter, and that allows me also to have a headset with a mic. I don't have the headset on, but I kind of have it around my neck, but the mic is sticking up to my mouth, so I hopefully the sound is okay. Um, uh, okay, so I'm just, which is interesting of doing all this underdrawing is that there's a lot of graphite on the panel, and that's helping cool down and gray the white that I'm painting with. I'm almost not it's almost has no color except for white there, and you can see all the gray getting picked up, which is fine. I can play with that a little bit and get some of the grays are that are naturally in the face. Oop, a little bit too much, and then can play around with a little, get some of the color in. Do want to make sure that I get a fair amount of that upper eyelid in the drawing. I noticed that things seemed to be off because I wasn't really capturing the tilt of her head and getting the right perspective. Even though things were in the right place, it just looked really wrong. So without getting some of those details, like the light that's on her under eyelid, her lower eyelid, sort of the upper edge of that's you can see the light reflecting off of it, then it doesn't look like it's at the right angle that she's actually looking down. So just try to indicate that quickly, even if it's not perfect. I just want to get the sense of it. She has this interesting reddish shadow coming off the edges of her eyes. Okay, so yeah, so that is starting to give me the right feeling there. And also how close the proximity of her eyebrow right here to her eye. Oops, I just made a mess of that, but can fix it. And so there's lots of things. I had to go back and remeasure the drawing several times because the brain typically wants to put things in the wrong place, wants to flatten out and normalize a lot of the measurements Things like there's not just a tilt of the head, but it's turned slightly away, and your brain wants to kind of put everything in the center, and even if things aren't there, so you just have to go back and remeasure to get those things right. And in fact, even though I'm going in pretty confidently with the paint, I may have to go back and measure some of these things again also. Okay, so how are you guys doing tonight? It's a beautiful Tuesday night so far. Wouldn't mind you guys telling me where you're all watching from. It's kind of interesting when there's people here, even if there's just a few people that are from all over the globe. I know this is hard for those on the Greenwich Mean Time European um, time zones to come in to watch because it gets to be kind of late or early there. Okay, let's if I can indicate that shadow underneath the nose, even though if I have to adjust it later, that's going to help me out here. Really start to get a sense of dimension of the face. So the tones in her face are all really subtle, very cool. Um, there isn't a lot of dramatic changes of value except for maybe some of these highlights, which I'll put them in now, but I'm really going to have to play with them later. Um, that's going to give some interest to the paint later on because everything else is going to be fairly smooth. It's not going you're not going to see a lot of the process if I do what I want to do here, which is to make all these changes very, very subtle. Get that upper eyelid back in here with that little bit of blues reflecting back. When I say blues, like this very light blue highlight there. Correct that shape. Okay, so we're starting to see some of the form, even if there's parts of it that aren't quite right yet. But I really need to get some of those things right to start to visualize what I'm doing. There's even though there's lots of changes in value, I mean subtle changes, almost no change in value. There's this area of the cheek, it's pointing up, this is pointing at us, and it does curve down, and it's all just that slight progression of a value change that lets us know that that's turning blue. I need more very light blue here, and then going into pink. Have have to get some little bit of cleaner color here to get some of that to work. And this shadow will be getting red around the edge as it really has a soft edge, but as it bleeds into the light, it is going through that kind of color shift, picking up a lot of red. I gotta pay attention to that. And then just slight little change in value along the edge of the nose tells us that where the edge of that nostril is. Okay, and I know the nose is just a little bit narrower than I have it. I'm going to have to play around to find the right place. Okay, I have someone from Sudbury, Ontario, Canada. Nice to meet you all. That's Laurent, Loran Ledrew, and someone here from Iraq. Great. I love that. That here I am, just home alone on my doing a painting on Tuesday night, and I have my friends here from around the world watching. even though it's just a few. It says there's 12 of us here, or actually 11 because I have my, um, well, yeah, 12 because if you count me, it's 12. I have my monitor on, so it playing the video back at me or playing the stream back at me, so it's counting me also. Or maybe it's counting me twice, who knows. Okay. When I came in to draw the lip, I drew the upper lip too deep. It really needs to be very thin to give the sense that her head is again pointed down. So I have the upper lip and then right alongside of it very quickly is the shadow. And then I have pretty full lower lip. And I'm going to have to eventually make that red much cleaner to get it as light and as pink as it needs to be. Maybe I can, and that's just making the paint thicker and thicker. I have it a little bit wet right now, but and also her the center line of her mouth is actually over, and that's very important to get that right. The tip of the nose is here, center line of the mouth about there. Okay, come back up a little. All right. Cause why that's important is that there's this curvature to her head because it's tilted down, but the roundness of her face, and so those features move over subtly in the perspective that we're looking at her face at, and so those that center line is really important to help in understanding the angle of her head. And let me see. Oh, I didn't read all the comments here. So we also have Marion, who's based St. Louis, Mississippi, and we have Jose from Miami, Florida. You're all welcome. This is great. I love it. Hope I haven't missed any of you um, in the comments there. It gets pushed down as it goes, and I may not have looked over. So, really want to focus on getting all these subtleties in her face. So that requires a bit of accuracy of the values and placement, and a lot of working back and forth until I can get those right. I'm one of those painters that not so exact with the drawing. Um, I tend to work things out in the painting part of it. There's other painters that, especially that have gone through like the Florence Academy of Art, and then um, some of the academies in the United States that are um, much more rigorous in that part of the painting. I like the open brush work and that the process of finding some of those forms. And also, I have a little bit of ADHD, so the impatience in the drawing part does kind of push me to get right into the painting. And so this process works naturally with my own personal process. And I think that's important for artists to find what working methods works with their natural process. If you are very meticulous and detail oriented, then doing a very detailed drawing before you get into the painting may be a better fit. Okay, I'm going a little bit darker than I want, but it's still a little bit early to judge some of those values till I get some of the dark areas around her face resolved. Let's see if I can adjust this eyebrow here. That's not really getting the sense that it's tucked under, that that it's in perspective yet, but we'll get there. And if I can just get a little bit of this brighter white here, start to get that form to turn under. Get this little bit of dark in here. I hope that you guys can hear me okay with this mic setup. Um, if someone wants to chime in and tell me, that would be great. I'm sure it's better than it had been before when I was just trying to shout into the phone that was behind me. Get some. Also, it almost looks like a little bit of redness around the eyes from maybe crying or something like that, and that's sort of what's giving it some of the sense of emotion. Okay, and let's see if I can get the nose. The nose is looking too broad right here, so I need to get this part again moving away from us. Um, Sound is perfect. Oh, great. And we have Omar. I'm sorry, Omar. I can't uh, read your writing there. If it's Arabic or something else, I'm not sure. It's actually showing very small on my screen too, even if I could read it. But um, I might be able to translate that later, but not while I'm painting. Okay, and she has that nose ring on. I will paint that in more detail later. I can just put a touch of white there just to get a sense of where it is. Yep. Just little clues to help my brain see where I am. So I'm going to do a lot of blending in this painting. I usually try to stay away from it because it leads to kind of a grayish result. But because the values in her face are so smooth and the changes are so subtle, I don't really see how I'm going to get um, some of the effects I want without doing a fair amount of blending. I really need my. I'm not sure how well you can see my palette. I have the camera angled a little bit so you can see my color mixing. Um, I have a very bright, cool, transparent red. Has a very high tinting strength. That's quinacridone red, and I have a alizarin permanent for getting very dark red, something like the separation in lips, or um, tend to use it there, or like in the tear duct of the eye, those kind of places. And then I have a naphtha red, which is a warmer, semi-transparent red. It's a little bit like that naphtha red is a little bit like a cad red. It's a little bit more intense than a cad red, and doesn't quite have the opacity. You really need to get a little more blue in her face. Her face is very blue, especially here underneath her lips. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to blend a lot of this, and then I'm going to come in areas and either push them lighter or darker until I can get some of the forms to read. So I know there's going to be a drop in value along the lower edge of her jaw, and there's just a little bit of hint of more red there in some of the edges, or more blue, purple. But in all cases, it's pretty much going to a little bit darker. And then I have that sweep of red that's underneath her chin. Oh, so the question Omar is asking, um, he says, "Oh, I meant that the sound is great. Why don't why you don't technique? Why don't you use a technique where you paint the value first using black and white, and after that put colors simply? When you say put colors simply, I assume you mean to put glazes of color on top." And it's because of the style of painting that I do is a more of a direct painting technique where all the colors are mixing together. And well, it just happens this week. Her face is very gray, so I am essentially am painting with white, and then I'm picking up the graphite from the drawing, which is giving me most of my gray, which is fortunate. It's actually working out. I haven't really touched the black at all yet, but I'm getting so much gray from the graphite mixing in with the white as a kind of pigment that that is working to my advantage. But normally I would be trying to lay down each color and value as close as I can to what it is in the reference, and that's more of a traditional alla prima technique. And if you're able to do value and color at the same time, which I've developed the skill to do that, then the painting in a way can go very quickly. It's an indirect painting technique is closer to what you were talking about, is doing a grisaille or a black and white under drawing or under painting, um, and then mixing uh, both transparent and opaque colors on top of that. And that's not really my preferred way of working. It may not be too late for me to try new things, and so I may play around with that idea a little bit at some point. Um, just like I am doing more under or preliminary drawing now with my paintings that I hadn't been doing in the past. And part of that is pragmatic, to be able to do something uh, preliminary, something on my Instagram channel for my folks over there to see some of a process. And then but it then also speeds things along when I get actually to the painting. um, it sort of forces me to delay what I normally do, which is jump right into the painting, because um, I get a little anxious and want to just get right to the meat. I hope that answered your question. Okay, great. Okay, so again, looking to modulate some of the values here as I go. I want to get the sense that this form, it's quite round. This is the part facing us and it curves under. So I need to get my, of that particular form, need to get my lightest light up here near the eyebrow. And then let me get the rest of this eyebrow in here. The shapes of these things have to be, I have to pay attention to them because they do tell a lot about how the form is turning. Okay, So then I also need this red underneath, this little bit of a darker value to tell us that the form is turning. And then just a little quick darker value here to really finish it off, to really tell our brain that it's turned. Okay. So I know quite a few of you said you wanted to paint along. I'm not sure if you're doing that during the live demo or you might do it later. So if some of you are painting and you're able to tell me, I'm kind of curious that there's some of you out there that are doing that. Okay. So you see how I'm starting to get some of those real subtle color and value changes. A little bit of pinks coming in this upper cheek. And the great thing about oil paints is that is you can really do a lot of painting. Can't even articulate myself tonight. That you can do a lot of blending. It's great. You can't do that with acrylics, watercolors, not so much. But with oils, you really can get a lot of back and forth play until you get the edges and the values that you want. So you see here, have the shadow here, but the edge is too hard. So I can just come in and soften that and get that kind of real spatial effect from getting those soft edges there. And then all of a sudden it does feel like that lower lip is just really coming forward, especially if I clean up this edge here. Okay, Marion says she's painting. That's great. Maybe someday we can do a simulcast of everyone painting at the same time. Show it on multiple screens or something. Technology isn't quite there yet, or maybe it is. I just haven't mastered it. Okay, so feeling that lip, not quite right yet. That highlight is not quite in the right place, but I'm just going to subtly try to move it over a little. And that is, there's something a little bit sublime about those just touches of highlight on her face with all the gray tones. And papaya is says also drawing along currently. Great. Okay. So I want to make sure there's a lot of light on her forehead. If I compare that, if I look at her forehead compared to the lower part of her face, you can see, if I isolate it, you can see how much lighter it is. Um, when I say isolate, if I can separate it somehow just a little bit, you can see this part's lighter and the part down there is just a little bit uh, cooler and darker. And so it would be real easy to kind of miss that. Um, so I'm just going to come in with quite a bit more white up here, try to lighten that up. And that also is adding to the sense that her head is tilted down because it tells us that that part of the head is facing more directly towards the light, and then the lower part of the face is then turning away from us. There are some forms in her lower face that are at a little bit of a different angle and they're picking up the light. And so I want to make sure that I'm getting that also. Okay, I'm just going to carve, get that shadow underneath her chin. That's going to help us see that form. She has her chin narrows quite a bit here. Again, the brain probably wants to make it a little bit thicker, sort of averaging things out. So I have to be some vigilant, really get the true nature of it. And then again, I have the soft edge on the outer part. And so I need to get a little bit of paint down to get that edge. So again, quite cool in her neck, almost violet, blue violet color. I'm going to go through a lot of white tonight, getting those subtle colors. So I can go back and forth between this bluish light here and then the edge of the shadow until I get it soft enough. And then because her this edge of her face is also turning away from us, it does also have a bit of a soft edge. Really want the paint to help me out here to create the illusion that this form is turning. You know it when you see it because it just all of a sudden it's like something you can grab. And then just little bits of highlight there too is going to help. So I'm not sure the resolution of the camera doesn't look like it's that great on this when I look at it on the screen. I don't know if that's has to do with my Wi-Fi connection or just the YouTube right now. Um, Unfortunately, so it's maybe a little bit hard for you to see some of the detail that I'm talking about. That's unfortunate because when I look on the screen, I can barely see what I'm doing there. So sorry about that. Again, technical difficulties. Okay, just getting it, indicating some of the hair there. I can come back to that later. Sometimes if you just kind of get it right the first time with the brush strokes, you kind of want to try to preserve some of that freshness, but we'll see. Okay. Okay, so you guys see a little bit better than I do for some reason. Don't know why. Okay. Okay, time to do a quick ice water break. Hold on a second. You're going to hear me gulping now because of the microphone, but that's okay. Yeah, it's a little hot and muggy tonight in my little studio. It's actually the mud room off the kitchen, but us artists have to do with what we got. Okay, I'm gonna come in a little bit stronger with some of the blues because I need the that payoff of getting some of actual blue color in her face. So it's there in the photo, and I want it to be um, really like the how beautiful some of those blues are. So I want to make sure that I get them. Sometimes you get a bluish effect just because um, even if something isn't blue, the colors may be cooler at that in that area. So it may be just going from a warmer red to a cooler red, and the overall effect is that it looks bluer. Need to get the corner of her mouth going up just a little bit more, and then maybe the center of her mouth dropping just a little bit there. Okay, that's looking good. And more blue right here. And yeah, and then she has just a little hint of red, darker red on her chin here as it goes into something close to shadow, kind of grayish red. And then it actually is in shadow right here, so I can just carve in a little bit with like a black. Okay, and oops, sorry about that. Um, Her chin comes in a little bit tighter there. This is where I have to do a little bit of squinting, kind of look back and forth the photo and do a little bit of comparing. So I've made her face a little bit too narrow. This is easy to fix because I can just play with the edge there, push it out just slightly. And then same here. So I want to keep her forehead fairly wide. This is again adding to that illusion that her head is tilted down, but without getting the right width in her forehead, it's not going to read right. Okay, so just going to indicate kind of where her bangs are. And then again, that shadow underneath her bangs is a pretty bright red. So I'm just going to come in with some of the pure quinacridone red right there. Maybe a little bit of the naphthol red. It does seem to be a little bit on the warmer side. And then I can come in with black after that, right along that edge. Okay, we're about 40 minutes in. Not a bad pace for tonight. Um, I was struggling a little bit with the panel size. I really wanted to paint this 14 by 18, just adding a little more image or giving the image a little bit more space around it. But I didn't have one prepared, and then I was going to go 16 by 20, and they had all everything, the crop the image to that size, and then it was all ready to go. Had this 16 by 20 panel all set up, and then I looked at my image and it looked too square, and I measured it and it was 16 by 18, and it wasn't going to work 16 by 20. So then I pulled out a 12 by 16 panel that I had and cropped in the image just a little bit. And if you can see, don't have as much of her shoulder as I wanted, and this is over, and came in pretty tight to the hand right there, not really showing the arm coming down, and then cropping the top of the beret. Before in the 16 by 20, I had a lot of space over the top of her head, and sometimes that's good. It helps give a little bit more prominence to the face, but but cropping in a little bit tighter is nice also because it really does create a greater sense of intimacy, which I'm kind of after in my painting. So it also plays a tight cropping plays very well on social media. Not as well in a museum, but in social media, people respond to being having images much closer cropped. In fact, when I do my detail slides of posts on Instagram, I get a much bigger reaction than when I'm showing the whole painting because people really just want to get in there and see the brush work and just really want to see what's going on in the painting. And if you're have this sort of faraway sense view of your subject, then it's really hard for people to see what's going on. Like I said, it works really well in a museum where you can get really close and then step away again. It's a little bit harder to do that in social media, or you can do it, but people tend to overall just look at what's presented there to them and respond to that. You can take the time and blow up an image and take a closer look and copy and paste it into another window and make it larger. So really missing a little bit of the contour of her jaw here. Her the her cheek drops down a little bit lower than what I have it. The same here on this side has a little bit of that softer forms around the lip, and then the chin comes up a little bit higher here. Sorry, I came in with some very thick paint right there, but I do want it to be thicker and a little bit of blue in it. Okay. So, and then I really do want to get that black here in the separation of the lips to really feel like you can really feel that shadow. And just, it gets very thin right here. So just using the edge of the brush to get some of that. Okay. And I'm missing the philtrum. That's that groove in the upper lip. So just can indicate that with just a few lighter lights. And oops. Okay, and then have paint on my monitor, so I'm having a little bit of value judgment problems there. Someday I'll come in with some industrial strength Windex to get that kind of clean again, get all the paint droplets off of it. It's I paint with my monitor really close to my painting setup, so I often get quite a bit of paint on it. Okay, there's this little, very subtle, darker red right here, helping describe um, her lip, and then on likewise on the other side, a little bit of shadow that goes up, and then a little bit of cooler color right against that. In fact, if I can get it, that's sort of a little pocket of darker value there. And then a little bit of darker red right along her cheek. A little bit too much, so I'll adjust that. And then some lighter red here. Okay, that's starting to feel right. Okay, really do not quite getting how fast the nose is turning there yet, so it just looks a little bit too broad. And she has a little bit of pointiness to her nose, so I have to come up a little bit higher with the nostril on both sides to get that. And adjust back the other way. So there's a very soft turn right here on the flare of the nostrils because compared to the tip of the nose, which is a little bit sharper. And if you look, there's this kind of reddish core shadow that's just right here on the tip of the nose. And then we have a little bit of purple coming in right here. This is what I'm missing, is that the little bit of darker value that's helping describe the shape of her nose. And then the light of the cheek, where the light, it's turning a little bit more towards the light here. So we get that in the right place. It's going to help. Okay. And then I have that little bit of hotter highlight right there. Okay, Omar says, um, I got inspiration from you. This painting is totally amazing. Thank you so much. Oh, well, that's very sweet. Thank you. Okay, just make these little adjustments as I go that give me a fair amount of control over getting the likeness and getting the forms to turn similar to what I'm seeing. It's a little bit of a darker ledge there on the side of the nose. No, I went a little bit too far there, so I just can knock it back a little bit. But just as long as I get it in there. And then again, cooler light in the cheek right here. That's telling us that the form is changing direction again. Again, I'm doing a lot of blending tonight. Just really want to get that softness of the form's interface. There's almost like a china-like quality to some of her face because it's just so um, cool and soft. So, so looking closely at the corner of her mouth there, there's forms that I'm used to seeing. Typically, the corner of the mouth will, everyone's corner of the mouth will have these same shapes. It's just a little bit of a soft form that's at the edge of the mouth. And that's what happens when you paint enough faces. You just start seeing certain patterns that repeat over and over again. And you just say, oh, I know what that is. I've seen it. I know. I'm going to put that in. Whereas if you don't, um, don't have the experience, then you wouldn't even know to look for some of those things. So the more you paint, the more stuff you start to see, and then you go ahead and put them in. And some of these things are just so subtle. I mean, a lot of times, a lot of the painting would work without even indicating it, but just knowing that it's there and just giving this the slightest indication that you see it, and you delineate some forms around it, um, allows you to just put so much more into the painting. Okay, she's got a little bit of her jewelry. I want to just get an indication of that. So she's got, it's like a rod, I guess, that's going through her lip there. Just make sure I get it in about the right spot. Okay, the lower one I think I just have over just a little bit too far. So I'm going to paint out the edge, and it has just a bit of shadow underneath it, a little bit of red. Okay, kind of painted it and then unpainted it, but let's see if I can get it in there. Okay. And then all it takes is just, I think I've gone black enough or dark enough right there. Maybe just another touch of there, another touch of dark. And then what I want to do is just with the edge of see if I can find a brush that's held up pretty well. Oh, here, let's just try this round. Just want to get a little bit of paint on the very tip of it, and then just touch that right in the middle. I think I want to get a little more paint down than that. I might have to put on my reading glasses to see what I'm doing here. These are, you can't see them, but they're tiger pattern with transparent red. Um, Not very masculine reading glasses, but that's okay. No one can see me. I hope to get this the first time, because if you do it too many times, it just doesn't quite look as fresh. And then sometimes you just have to wipe it out and start again. And I think I got a little bit too big too with the ball, so I'm going to have to carve that out. Okay, that doesn't look too bad. And then do the same thing with the. Okay, so that lower ball is actually picking up more light for some reason. Okay, that's okay for right now. You can go ahead and touch that up later. I just kind of wanted it indicated in there. And since I have this little brush out, I can go and reestablish that shadow that's there. Okay. Great. Okay. Let's see. Just doing a little comparison back and forth. That actually is looking pretty good so far. It's not until I get a little bit further along that I can do some of the finer adjustments. And right now it's all about the eyes, so let's see if I can get some of that to read properly. And she has the red makeup, red mascara, red eyeliner, and the red eyeshadow. Just a little bit there, but the also the tops of her lids, I think her flesh tones are very pink also. So that's I think that's just the actual skin color right there. But it's all playing off of itself. And I do want to get this upper eyelid. I want to see it trailing off away from us right there. Not quite getting it yet, but close. Okay, starting to see it. Let's get a little bit, reestablish that highlight that's there. I know it needs to be bluer. There's a lot of blue in it, but I'm just going to start off with just white there. And then I want to find the corner of that eye, and then really do need my phthalo blue to get the white of the eye there. It's very blue in the photo. And make sure I get the shape of the iris. It's kind of important. That's one of the keys to get it to look like she's looking in the direction that we want. That both the shape of the iris and also how the white of the eye is lit tells us a little bit about the direction of the eye. It's funny, you can have all of that in the right place, but if you have your values off, you doesn't look like the eye is pointing in the right direction. I've done that so many times where it's just like I know I have it painted right, but it was just a matter of coming back in and putting a little bit more light or dark in the white of the eye on one side or the other, and then it all seems to snap into place. Okay, need again a greenish blue for her eye color. Just right here, just make that dark edge of her iris just a little bit thinner there. And then typically, the light passing through the eye, if the light is coming from above, then that'll pass through the eye and light the lower section of the eye. I exaggerated that a little bit too much, but you can really see it when I did that. And then come down just a little bit lower with the pupil of the eye. Okay, that is not too bad. Don't have the edge of her eyelid quite right yet. Oops. Nope. So I wasn't being quite careful enough with this shape. It does curve down right here, and then there's this very thin dark shadow between the eyelid and the eye. And so if I can be kind of careful, I can get that. I really actually can't see. The tip of my brush is a little bit bent from sitting in my thinner and resting on its tip a little too much. That's just bad um, material care on my part. Okay, get that shadow underneath the eyebrow to read. Right here, it's just a little bit lighter and redder than the eyebrow. And then the eyebrow, I can just exaggerate it, just make it a little bit darker than it is to get that to read. And then there is a little bit of the crease of the eye right there. And darker shadow as it comes in. Okay. So that's starting to read a little bit. There's a crease in the eye there, and then another crease higher, a little red, just more subtle. So these little details, I can decide to not really focus on them and leave them out of the painting, but but they do play a role in this case, just helping us get the direction of the eye. Okay, just not having enough control right now for those little shapes. Okay, so we're in about an hour so far. I think I'm going to need the full 2.5 hours tonight. So we're on till about 11:30 Eastern Standard Time. Because I still really haven't gotten to any of her hair, the beret, or her neck, but I don't have to do all that tonight. It's really her face that I want to focus on, but I do need to get some of these values in to kind of judge the other values. I'm just going to scrub in some of her blouse. This has a very soft edge here. I have to put in some of that blue to get that. Let's just be a little bit what's the word? Ungraceful. No John Singer brushstrokes, John Singer Sargent brushstrokes here. I'm just scrubbing it in. A little bit of red in that black here so that I can get that sense of the transparency of her sleeve. So I'm seeing the flesh tones through the fabric. Then it gets a little bluer there. Get a little bit of white in that. There we go. Okay, so if I do this right, it will look like it's a little bit translucent so that you can see flesh tones. Okay, cool. And then I know I'm going to end up spending a lot of time on this hand. I just haven't decided whether I'm going to try to tackle it tonight or not. Okay, that's just the general shape there. I can come back later for to get a little more detail. Something's a little off here. So need her finger actually to be down here. So let's see if I can get in some of the major shape here. That's a finger. The thumb comes right here. And this is fairly horizontal, and then fingers are curled under. Okay, so now I need a really big brush. So I'm trying to get just quickly some of the major forms indicated in the hand, not any of the detail. If I do it well enough, then the hand will start to read. But that's kind of rare to get that kind of right on the first couple of whacks at it. What I do know is that if I get the outer silhouette of the hand close, that really does help. Okay, that needs to be black on this edge. Don't know why I was coming in with white. Okay, need this lower edges and shadow will help get it to start to read. A little bit of red underneath the thumb. So typically fingers will be a little bit redder on the towards the tips. We'll just have more blood flow and closer to the surface, so it will so you can see that in the hands. If you go to a museum and you look at what all the masters do when they paint hands, they're almost always making those fingertips pretty pronounced redder. Um, just exaggerating that a little bit, especially like Rococo painters will get a lot of pink in those forms. It's a great opportunity to get more pink in their paintings, so they took it. Okay. Again, I want to get some of the transparency that's in the shirt and her blouse. And then later I can come back in with some of those polka dots. Not going to worry about them yet. Just want to finish some of the framing around her face to see the values. A little bit of the auburn color in her hair. That's just, a little bit of red and black. If I had um, burnt sienna in my palette, I'd probably be using some of that. I don't. Taking it off my palette last year just found that I could get those colors easily by mixing other colors together, and was looking to simplify my palette a bit. So all those earth tones came off, because earth tones you can get by just mixing brighter colors together, adding black or complementary colors to brighter colors, and then voila, you have something similar to those earth tones. Okay. So, and then I'm going to block some of the hair in. A little bit of orange and red with black can get me sort of the right direction. Okay. And then I'll be coming in with some blue and white. Let's see if I can get pretty clean here. And top of her head, there's a little more orange there. And then there's that dark area right here. And there is sort of some bands of light in here that I want to go back and get. And then kind of this grayish color that comes in here. Again, lighter than the hair around it. And it will have little dashes of highlight in there. Okay. And now she has hair. Okay. Don't have to get crazy with it yet. And just want to indicate her beret. Think. Don't want to double check that measurement. So the top of her head's just coming up a little bit higher. Got kind of a little bit of a shadow there. That angle that comes down. And then I'm just going to come in with my pure red. Kind of looks nice, doesn't it? Just how bright that is. I'm going to have to modulate that a little bit to give it some form, but I like the graphicness of it right now. Get a little bit of the other reds in there. Great. Okay. So far, that's looking pretty good. Yeah, got a lot of red in my brush. Hold on. Okay. See that there's still 12 of you here. I don't know if it's the same 12, but usually when I check the stats afterwards, it says, your peak, um, what do they call it? Peak watchers. Like the most number of people watching at any one time was like last week it was like 14, but then total number of people that watched was something like 80. So either it meant that there was a lot of switching off, or that there was a bunch of people that came in who just watched for a minute and then turned it off, which is fine. Stay as long as you like. Um, I get this shadow here. So I can see by my negative space underneath the hand that I don't have the hand quite big enough. So, or that there's something that's quite a bit off. Maybe that there's not enough room up here too. That I made that a little bit too short. And I can go in and measure again things like where that thumb touches. So yeah, it's much lower than when I have it drawn. Yeah, so I'm just gonna wipe this part of the hand out because I really don't have it quite in the right place, which is fine. I mean, didn't spend a whole lot of time on it yet, so it doesn't quite upset me. And maybe that gives me a chance to start approaching the hand much softer, not really looking at any of the details yet, but just trying to get a sense of the form of it. Okay, a little bit better start, I think. Okay, so I have to start thinking about what color I want the background to be. I can see it's cool on this side. It's a little bit warmer on here. Maybe playing off the blues in the face, I can go pick up a darker blue, blue-gray there. Let's see. Want a lot of paint so I can cover over that area quickly. Looks too dark and maybe too dull. Yep, I think that's close. Maybe just a little bit brighter. Yep, there we go. Okay, that's looking good. There's areas where I can come in a little bit lighter, a little bit darker, just keep that background from being too flat. Okay, and That's so far it's looking okay. Are you guys still awake out there? Sorry if I'm putting you to sleep. It's I know some of you are drawing, and don't want to disturb you guys. Just if you guys have any questions, let me know. More than happy to talk about whatever. Actually, last week I talked a little bit about my marketing efforts to market my work. Um, was had put together a shop on Etsy to sell my work. I had originally tried to make a shopping channel using Spotify, but I had some issues with that, and so in a way, Etsy ended up being a better fit for what I was trying to do. And just sort of indicating the highlights in the hair there using the brush to try to get kind of mimic those strands of hair, the pattern from the strands of hair. Do not want to paint every hair, so letting the brush, the separations in the brush hairs do a little bit of that work for me. Okay. Again, want to follow the contour. There's a little bit of blue in her hair and a little bit of the darker values. Want to make sure that I get that sense that the hair is curving around here. Okay, that's not looking too bad. I have this sort of orange highlight that's running through here. Gets a little bit lighter towards the top of the head right there. Great. Okay. And have some measurement that's a little bit off. Maybe top of her head's just a tad higher, like around there. And come in with a little more white. Okay. And then my back, the shape of my top of the beret is just a little bit not quite as high there. It just cuts in a little bit steeper. And you see that sort of accidental red in there? That's really something really nice about that, so I may decide to leave that in with a little bit of thicker paint around it. Um, those kind of little things just create a little additional interest. It's kind of happy accidents, like Bob Ross says. Okay, and if I can make a little bit of a lighter red here, I'm gonna throw in some orange just to keep the intensity of the color up. So yeah, so that's giving me some of the sense of turn. And then I said I wanted that the background to be a little bit warmer on that side. So still blue, but I have a little bit of red pinks in there. And maybe just a little bit lighter. There we go. That's the color I was looking for. Okay. And do you want to mimic that soft edge that's in the photograph, and then that background color gets a bit of hit of light in it. I can come in with a little more red, sorry, a little more white, but then it gets a little darker down here. Hold on, just draw the hair out a little bit higher there. Okay, so now as we're starting to get most of the white of the board covered, we can start to see the values and how they're working. Okay, a little cleanup, a little more water, take a little stretch. That probably will sound really great, me banging the microphone with the glass. Sorry about that. Hope, hope you guys have eardrums left. Really sorry. So, it's kind of left one eye unpainted. Not intentional, just didn't really focus on it. So, let's try to get that one in. Okay, let's get a little bit of the eye color in there. And the white of her eyes there is on that one side is actually quite pink. Let's see if I can get that color together with my messy palette. No, too dark. Let's try that again. There. And then a little bit of like almost a periwinkle blue on the other side here. And then again with the red eyeliner. Okay, and we do have the her iris dropping just a little bit too low. There's the reflection of the highlight that's right in her upper lid right here. Not getting enough pure paint down. Let's try that again. Yep, that's a little closer. Can carve that shape back a little bit. Okay, that's good. And then on the cheek, can can carve that a little bit too, that shape. Just want a little bit softer. There we go. And let's get that iris there. Shadow of the upper eyelid coming around. And then then stopping right there. Then we get a little bit of the tear duct, corner of the eye. Okay. And then it's like it's just painting itself, right? Highlight. See how quickly that all seemed to come together? That wasn't too bad. Okay, so really want to get these subtle shapes just right so that I want that part of the nose to feel almost photographic in accuracy. Okay, gotta get these smaller forms right. There's something a little off about the direction of the nose, but we can correct that. So this nostril just slightly higher than the other one, so that looks like it's about right. It's red shaped curls around there. Mm, okay. Just some of the edge of the eyebrow. Okay, now we really have to do a lot of comparing if I'm going to get some of these drawing issues resolved. And what am I comparing? Like where these eyebrows are in relationship to each other, getting the sense of form so that you see the side of the nose even though there's not a lot there to tell you. I'm not going to be able to get the nose to look right unless the forms in the nose are turning in space, have the illusion that they're turning in space in the right direction. Even if the drawing is right, if the value structure isn't, it's not going to look right. Okay, there I need a very light blue there. Nope. Try that one again. Well, since I got quite a bit of blue down, I can just come in with a little bit of white. Try to surround that with the gray, purple. And get those little bits of light in the corner of the eye. Okay. Okay, that's looking good. This right here isn't quite there yet. Okay. Right. So what I was saying before was that I've started to market um, my work, trying to find some sales channels. So I now have bits and pieces of work that are now available on Etsy. Um, and Etsy is a real tough cookie in terms of trying to figure out how to drive traffic to your artwork. Um, you can do it by bringing your own people, like through your social media followers, um, or through SEO, just getting the right keywords and um, to drive organic traffic. And then there's also, you can buy some advertising. And actually, I do have started getting a little bit of paid ads at just a very small budget, like $1 a day. But even with that budget, it's hard for Edgy to place my work, meaning there's lots of players out there that are paying that are bidding up the price of the advertising, and so at the price that I put for my highest bid is far too low to get my work shown. So even though I have a budget of $1 a day, and they say they'll most likely it will get spent. Um, it's been 2 days and no ads have run so far. There was maybe one placement, but with one placement, you're not going to get a click through, or it'd be very rare. It'd be more typical to get one click for every 100 impressions, and so um, at that rate, if I keep my prices, the ad bids the way they are, I'm not actually going to get shown through advertisement. So I have to go up to, I don't know what it would be, 25 cents a click, um, or 50 cents a click, because there's so many artists on Etsy and there's so many people advertising their art. So that is a very tight market. And so the best thing to do is just bring along your own peeps. At least that's what I've been doing so far. I've sold one print where seemed kind of random. Don't Didn't recognize the person from either from Instagram or YouTube. So, but all my other sales have been people that are familiar with my work over coming over from YouTube mostly. Not, I mean, coming over from Instagram. So I've also put I guess you would call it a product or service placement of my portrait commissioning um, on as a shop item. So I'm kind of curious to see um, how that goes. It's certainly a place for me to point people who ask about a painting commission. I can just point them right to my Etsy page and have lots of information there, so I don't have to um, explain in all detail everyone who asks me. Don't have to send them a personalized message. I mean, that sounds terrible, but to go and explain all the details sort of over and over again, as opposed to just having it in my shop where they can go um, read through all the information. Okay, need to get some blues up here in the hair. That looks like about the right value. It's a little bit more bluish color in right here. And then again coming up this side. Then I need to kind of get a reddish brown along this edge. And coming in. Okay, this is where I really need to sit back, look at both the photo resource and the painting, try to see where the things are off a little bit and make some of those adjustments. Little things here like the lips, quaint aren't long enough on this side. This needs to go out a little bit further, and if I can compare it, the edge of the nose to the edge of the lips, so that, and then on the other side, just it needs to be carved a little more tightly, and a little bit less right here. Okay, there you go. So that helps. Let's pull the corner of this eye a little bit further to the side. And we got this light here, corner of the eye. Okay, good. All right. So, I think tonight actually I'm going to paint until about 11 o'clock. Feeling a little bit um, too warm and a little bit tired. But a lot of this is just really subtle working back and forth. And um, I can do actually some of that a little bit better offline. So I'm just going to paint for 10 more minutes and then I am going to call it a night. See if I can get a little bit more of this hand indicated. Let me adjust the chin here first. Yep, that helps. Getting that chin right. Okay, and I have this edge just a little bit too soft here. I need to come in with the shadow, carve it a little bit more. Okay. Okay, and get those reds back underneath. Okay, need a little water break. Excuse me. Okay. There's just some real things that are just a little just subtly off, and I know that I'm going to have to figure out what those things are to get this to look right. It's going to take a fair amount of patience. Okay, this comes out a little bit wider here. Oops, wrong color, wrong value. And that's too dark right there. And then there's this little, the side of her nose near the bridge is the values are just very close together where the top of her nose and the side of her nose meet. There's just very little um, there to indicate it, so I just want to make it as subtle as it is. Okay, that's a little bit better. And it's an area here, not where the highlight is, but next to it is gets also pretty light. So this is where the light is, it's almost facing straight towards the light source. Okay. Okay, said I was going to try to get a little bit more of the hand in there. And so if I can find the edge here, indication of the finger. So the first knuckle here is facing almost completely away from us. It's a cylinder shape and then has this top of the nail there, then has kind of purple color cylinder coming at us, the dark edge here. It's really much subtler though. Let's see if I can knock that back a bit. And then the finger is almost perpendicular to us right here. Very blue-white. Well, that's just very blue, but not white. Okay. And then darker pink underside. And then the edge of the finger where the shadow is. Right like that. Okay. So some of this is just slowing down and finding the shapes and their position. Top of the nail, a little bit of indentation, the thumb comes up. So this is just really observation, really just taking a hard look. And a lot of white and blue. And then back to a red edge there that comes down. Let's see. And then got a carve in here. The wrist actually looks quite narrow. So I have to come in and carve out a bit more. There we go. In top of the thumb. Okay, that's starting to make a little more sense. Okay, then I'm just going to go in and put in some of the separation of the fingers. There's a little bit of shadow here that's very red. Then middle finger. Okay, and do that again. Same idea with the next finger. And then a little bit of a separation. Mind the knuckle there, and then let's actually correct this one first. Comes in a bit higher. Okay. And then last but not least, that same light that's on the pinky. Okay, and then so that gives me a better sense of the hand now. Okay, if I can just block off and get some of these values right in the hand, I don't have to put a whole lot of detail to get it to read. correctly. Okay. So again, thinking about this finger that's very much in perspective, comes to a point, almost like very much like a cone shape. Don't forget the negative space there. Blue, again, blue and white. There we go. Blue and white. Okay, you guys are quiet out there, but that's okay. So just going to give it 5 more minutes. Again, this is not done, but I'm not going to be able to finish it tonight. So I'm going to give it a bit of a rest, and then we'll get to it later in the week. I have a couple commissions going on right now. Um, some of that I'll post to my Instagram page. And one actually is interesting is that I worked from black and white photo but did a color painting. And what I did was I colorized the photo first so I had the colors to work from, and then then made the painting from that colorized version of the photo. Okay. It's there with the hand. Just refine that silhouette shape again. Yeah, I think I've gone through a whole tube of white in this painting so far. Not really, but some generous amount of white. Okay, so the hand, let's get, I'm not going to paint all the veins in the hand, but there is this prominent bluish white light there that does start to describe um, one of the veins here. There. Okay, so 10:57. I think that is a good stopping point. Please, I ask you if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do. That way you get any announcements, updates of when I'm going live or when I post any other videos. If you really want to get notifications, you hit subscribe, and then you also hit the notification bell, and then that guarantees that you will get notified. It's a two-step process on YouTube. They decided that it wasn't good enough for people to tell them that they subscribed to the channel. They also needed to make sure people also wanted to get the notifications that you would get if you were subscribed. Um, anyway, so it's that two-step process. Also, helpful to me if you guys share on social media to other people you think might be interested in, so that they also too can subscribe my channel. That also helps new people find me so that more people can come join in, watch, and paint. Um, and also, all your comments tonight will become part of the live feed, kind of permanent record, but that's separate than comments on the actual finished video. So after I end the video, very helpful if you guys put in some comments there too in my in the comments section, so that let people know what you thought of my video, good, bad, or indifferent. Always appreciate the thumbs up and positive comments, but if you have other things you want to say, um, go ahead and say it. Um, and and that's it for tonight. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. I'll be here again next week, so please come back and join along if you want to paint, or just be a spectator. But that's it for tonight. Have a lovely night and good night.